Ever since the Succession War started, Togashi has been dropping constant, deliberate hints. Hints that most of us completely missed. There are clues about two characters who are absolute carbon copies of each other in their personalities, behavior, habits, and even the environments that shape them. But there was one fundamental core difference that flipped everything. This one core thing is exactly what kept one of them from ending up just like the other. Let's start with the things they actually share, because once you see them, it's honestly hard to unsee. Both of them are geniuses. And I don't mean the gifted kid who worked hard type of genius. We're talking about the kind of talent that shows up maybe once in a generation. Killua mastered assassination techniques that most professional killers spend decades trying to reach. At a super young age, he mastered the rhythm echo and could kill without leaving a single trace. It was already at a level that made grown-ups look slow as hell compared to him. It's the exact same story with Tserriednich. He managed to develop his own nin ability in days. Just days. That's something most people need months or years of intense training under a master to pull off. He did it all by himself, inside the palace, without any formal nin education. Just raw, pure intelligence applied to a system he'd never even seen before. And that's the first striking thing between them. Pure, terrifying talent. Now, someone might tell me, bro, that's totally normal. The story is packed with talented people, and that's no reason to compare them. You're right, and that brings us to the second striking similarity between them. Neither of them handles killing emotionally. Killua made that clear early on. When he slaughtered those examiners in the Hunter exam, it wasn't out of anger or desperation. It was clean, efficient, done the exact same way he'd executed a job 1,000 times before. His hands knew what to do before his brain even finished processing the situation. And that's not just a skill, that's deep conditioning that literally became pure instinct. Tserriednich is the exact same vibe. His torture sessions aren't some chaotic, sadistic mess. They're methodical. He's obsessed with the craft itself, how much pressure, how much time, what extracts the most information, and what creates the absolute maximum amount of fear. He deals with human suffering the exact same way a surgeon handles a medical procedure, completely clinical. Same talent, same emotional detachment, same relationship with violence as a craft, not just an action. You're looking at almost the exact same person. What makes the comparison between them even more logical and realistic is the environment they were both born into. Both were manufactured inside systems that were literally built to mass produce this specific type of human being. When you look closely at these systems, you realize they aren't two different stories. It's the exact same machine running twice. The Zoldyck family is an assassination dynasty. It's a business, and the family itself is part of the job. From the moment Killua was born, he existed inside a system where your entire worth is tied to your performance as a killer. Love inside that house isn't free. You have to earn it through training, and the training itself is intentionally brutal. You survive it, you keep your spot. You show weakness, you get punished until that weakness is beaten out of you. Illumi's needle is the clearest symbol of what this system ultimately produces. A control mechanism planted directly inside Killua's own instincts. The family didn't just train him to kill, they trained him to fear his own ability to fight back. On the other side, yes, the Khakeen Succession War might look different on paper, but the end result is the exact same shit. You're a prince, your siblings are your rivals. Trust is a liability because the closest person to you today is probably the first one who's gonna backstab you tomorrow. Mercy in this system will literally get you killed. Tserriednich didn't choose to be someone for whom empathy isn't an option. That option never even existed in the first place. The succession contest rewards emotional detachment and ruthlessly punishes softness, without exception. Both systems demand killing for survival and status. Both systems view emotional attachment as a weakness that needs to be purged. In both systems, produce a person who looks at other people's lives as variables, things to be managed, not things that have value. Neither Killua nor Tserriednich chose this. They were built this way. But one of them broke the mold, and this is where the story gets really interesting. But before we go on, don't forget to like and subscribe because, as you can see, the numbers aren't really encouraging, and your support and beautiful comments are my only motivation. So thanks in advance to every single one of you, and let's keep going. Most people say Gon saved Killua, and that's true, but how he saved him is the important part. Gon didn't fix Killua, he didn't reprogram him. There's no scene where he sat down with him to explain why the Zoldyck training was wrong, and there was no systematic dismantling of everything they planted in him. Killua left his family as a finished product. The training had worked. What Gon did was way simpler. He was just there. He was just unapologetically there, reckless, completely attached, wearing his heart on his sleeve, never trying to fake who he was. All of this right next to a person who is built on the exact opposite. Gon doesn't calculate. He doesn't rank people based on their utility to him. He doesn't do a risk assessment before deciding how much to care about someone. He deals with people based on his genuine feelings. And he does it effortlessly, without a strategy, without even thinking it's weird. Because to Gon, that's just how you live. And Killua, who is trained to see every human relationship as a variable that needs management, stood next to this every single day. That friction gave Killua something his family had completely blocked from existence. A practical blueprint for empathy. He saw someone live without emotional detachment and not fall apart. He felt for the first time what it means for someone to care about you unconditionally, without having to prove yourself, without a needle to protect you from danger. On the flip side, Tserriednich never knew that. Every single relationship inside the Succession War rewards the exact same traits the war itself rewards: calculation, self-interest, and conditional trust at best. He never stood next to someone like Gon. There was no one in his life whose compass pointed to anything other than raw survival. One person with a compass changes the entire trajectory. Killua found that person. Tserriednich never did. Now that you've seen the similarities, the environments, and the single variable that made the difference, I can say it out loud with absolute confidence. Tserriednich is the completed version of the project Killua escaped from. Tserriednich's Nen progression, the speed, the instinct, the coldness with which he built his Hatsu, that's the blueprint. That is what Killua's journey would look like if no one had intervened. Same raw talent, same psychological shaping, same detachment, but with decades extra to completely transform into the exact thing the system was building. Tserriednich isn't a cautionary tale about a broken person ruined by his environment. Quite the opposite. Tserriednich is the success story. He is what happens when the system wins and the job is finished to the very end. The Zoldyck training didn't fail with Killua, it almost succeeded. And Gon didn't undo it. The instincts are still there, the speed is still there, and the capacity for violence is still right where it belongs. What Gon did was change the direction. He gave Killua a purpose to steer all of that toward. Without Gon, none of that redirection happens. Killua would have kept running the program. He'd be just as cold, just as efficient, and just as indifferent to human life as he was raised to be. Tserriednich isn't a villain origin story. He is Killua's origin story, but watched from the outside. And Tserriednich's existence gives us the answer to the question most Hunter x Hunter fans ask. What the hell would have happened if Gon never showed up? Now take a step back and look at the whole picture, because this similarity points to something way bigger than just these two characters. And this is Togashi's actual message behind this parallel. Talent doesn't define what a person becomes. That's the real meaning hidden beneath all of this. Killua and Tserriednich have almost the exact same raw material, the same ceiling, the same instincts, the same potential. What separated their endings wasn't capability. It was what each of them managed to reach on a human level. And Togashi actually showed us a practical proof of this concept long before the Succession War even started. Because Netero exists. Tserriednich's own grandfather, if we assume the theories are true, Netero reached the absolute ceiling of Nen. He was the strongest living human for most of his life. He had every single condition to become exactly the type of cold, detached, distant person that Tserriednich is turning into. He could have easily killed anyone he wanted. He could have ruled entire nations if he felt like it. But instead of all that, he became someone who fights with joy. Someone who sacrifices himself without hesitation and treats the people around him like they're worth protecting, not managing and controlling. The difference between Netero and Tserriednich isn't power, because each of them operates on a very similar level at the peak of their respective journeys. The real difference is what did each of them direct their power toward. Netero had things to care about outside of himself, and that caring shaped everything. How he fought, what he was willing to die for, and the kind of man he became after decades of being able to be absolutely anything he wanted. Tserriednich, though, has nothing like that. He has capability and he has contempt, and that's the entire build. Killua is currently walking Netero's path with Alika. Not because the Zoldyck training produced that result, hell no, but because one person showed up in his life and gave him something to direct his abilities toward other than just survival and status. Talent alone doesn't make you Netero, and it doesn't make you Killua. Alone, it just makes you Tserriednich. One more point and a question for the future, especially since the manga is finally back. Tserriednich right now is one of the most dangerous people alive in the entire story, not just in the Succession War. His Nen development is accelerating, and his political standing is terrifying. And he has absolutely no reason, from inside his own way of thinking, to believe he can ever be defeated. And that brings up the real question worth closing with. When Tserriednich falls, and in Togashi's stories, characters who look completely invincible always fall, what is going to bring him down? Will his lack of humanity blind him to something he simply can't calculate? A threat that only shows up if you actually care about the people around you, if you're monitoring relationships instead of just threats? Or will his absolute confidence in his own genius make him take a step that a less arrogant person would have known to avoid? That kind of overreaching only happens when you've never truly doubted yourself, because your environment never gave you a single real reason to do so. Both possibilities are very real, and the answer, when it comes, will tell you everything about what Togashi truly sees as the fatal flaw in a person built like this. You've now seen two geniuses shaped by the exact same system, but ending up in two completely different directions. But there are two other geniuses who gave us an incredibly brilliant and complex fight. One that most people didn't fully grasp or notice the insane tiny details within. I fully broke down that fight in this video right here. Go check it out. It'll completely change how you look at that battle. And yeah, that's it. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to support me, and peace.